Didn't he do the whole like Fan of the Opera curtain thing? And he was like six zapatadas.
He basically like pulled back the private thing. It was like bam.
But I always imagine like maybe it was just dramatized in my head that he like did the whole like dagger into the curtain thing and like slid down, and he's like took center stage, and he was like six zapatadas, and then he got chased down into a barn, and he died in the barn.
Welcome to another episode of Chaotic Pubcast. I'm your host for the night, Ryan Damask, with my fellow hosts, Zach Z Diggity and Steven Bonsai Bandit.
What's up? How you doing?
Yo.
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's been a great week. Got a lot done. Been productive. I'm a responsible adult now. Yeah, I can't complain. Yeah.
I, on the other hand, am embracing my unemployment. I'm getting as grungy and kind of like hairy as possible. Embracing my inner degenerate at a level I have never approached ever, and doing a remarkable amount of research on ghosts and spooky stuff. So, hey, we're back in the saddle. I'm ready to get into some stuff. What do you got for me today, Ryan? Because I'm just hard for this. I'm ready for it.
What?
I'm sorry, and here we go. Okay, here we go.
What? All right. Well, let me change. Well, now I got to change the subject. Let me change my topic for today.
Steven's response.
No, so I told Z before we started, I kind of waffled this week back and forth on what topic I wanted to do. I knew that we just came off of Mothman, so I knew I didn't want to do anything like paranormal or anything like that. I wanted to kind of get back to like some crazy stories in history, and I finally landed on probably one of my favorite ridiculous stories in history that centers around a young man named Gavrilo Princip, who was a Bosnian Serb, who you might know as the one who assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which kicked off a series of events that led to World War One.
And the hit single "Take Me Out." 100%.
We get that out of the way now.
I couldn't resist.
No, it's funny because you actually shared a YouTube video to us about like 2 months ago, and I think we spent like an entire day just making fun of this assassination attempt. But
it was a John Green video where he talks about how tuberculosis led up to World War One. And his take on it is hilarious. And I'm going to try to add a lot more detail and color to the actual events other than his condensed version in that video. But similar to how he started his video, I do want to say, like up front, there was a lot of things that were huge blunders and just comical. However, of course, millions of people did die as a result of this. So no way am I making light of that. I don't think any of us are. But we are going to have a good time with this topic and this crazy turn of events that led to really the end of one era in the beginning of the modern world in the most comedic of fashions.
Of course. I mean, and people by now, if they're subs still to the show, they know. they know. I mean, we're getting some heat. We've gotten some heat before.
Yeah. Our Giant Kandahar short is landing us in the hot seat with some would-be patriots.
Yep. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
as a fellow patriot, I don't see the big deal.
There we go.
So let me give you a little background into this. I know you guys also big fans of history like myself, but to maybe some that aren't as in the know on post socioeconomic and political conflicts, World War One was a big deal. Look it up, Google it. But what really there was a lot of things that were leading to it, right? I mean, you had giant empires that were continuing to try to expand their borders within this small European peninsula, and you had different ethnic groups being forced out of those empires, and many other things, right? And it was a hotbed ready for war. But one of the big ones that got it going was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, basically trying to swallow up the southern Balkan states into their empire and force out a lot of the other ethnic groups there, such as the Serbs. So the character in question that we're talking about today, Gavrilo Princip, he was, as all this stuff was rolling out in the years before World War One, he's still a very young man. Grew up in a poor little Serbian village. They were serfs. His father was like a part-time mailman, from what I understand, and they really didn't have anything. But what he did have was like a great mind. Like this kid was smart. Like he excelled in school. He read books that are probably bigger than anything that the three of us have read when he was a small child. Like, he's a really smart guy.
We'll see about that.
He was not trained to be an assassin from youth. Let's just say that.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like a Black Widow scenario, where he, he went to this like ballet thing or something. I don't know. Continue.
No,
don't continue. Explain the Black Widow shit to me. Like, how?
Maybe if you watched a Marvel movie for once in your goddamn life, Steven, you'd understand the reference.
Look, clearly I didn't miss much in Phase 4, but whatever.
You really didn't.
I get it now. I understand the basic precept of Black Widow, but see, my knowledge of Black Widows is actually like women who marry men and then kill them. So I was like, this is a weird connection here. Couldn't really make it. So here we are.
I was making the reference as in he was indoctrinated as a youth to become an assassin, but Ryan, apparently that's not.
So anyway, as he gets older, he starts reaching his teenage years. At this point, he wants to go to Sarajevo in Bosnia to go to a really nice school there, get further educated. But by the time he does this, it's right when like all hell is building up to World War One, right? So the Austro-Hungarian Empire annexes overnight the country of Bosnia, and basically is like a big FU to all the other Balkan states. And that's how they take it. Serbia and everyone else was like, oh, this is a show of force that they can just come and take us. And there were so many other things going on at the time in Europe that, Russia, France, England, like they were like, we don't really care about the Southern Balkan states. Like, just let them do whatever. We don't have time to mess with them about this. So they kind of just let them. And this is what really like started to turn young Gavrilo into what we would call today like starting to be a radical against the Austro-Hungarians.
Radicalization. It's always my favorite thing in the world when it comes to individuals is radicalization. It's like I'd like to hang out with a bunch of radicalized individuals. I'd say,
dude, just come down to the South, man. They're all around me.
No thanks.
I hang out with radical dudes all the time, so I don't know what you're saying.
I'm hanging out with two radical guys right now.
it,
baby. So anyway, he ends up meeting what will become two of like his best friends. And try to get these names right, but we have Nedeljko Chibinovic and Trifko Grabez, and they all like really start getting into the nitty-gritty. They start reading a lot of like anarchist manuscripts and stuff like this, and eventually make their way back to Serbia. And now we have what is known as the Black Hand. It's kind of like this underground organization, real deal, that was made up of some pretty big wigs. We're talking like what would be like what we would say like is the Secretary of Defense or like an FBI director or something in Serbia who's like leading the Black Hand. And it's this old group of basically Bosnian nationalists and Serbians who want to fight against the Austro-Hungarian Empire and make like a Balkan independent state.
But that's treason, Ryan. Why would they do that?
Because they fucking hated the Austro-Hungarians with everything in them. And so
wait, hold on, like raise my hand here. Was that born out of like kind of a different sort of situation here? Like we don't like them because they're different than us, or is it like a socioeconomic situation, like where most of the resources and benefits in the area were going to Austro-Hungarians versus the other people in the region?
Yeah, exactly. That's it right there.
Okay.
They're basically being ruled by people tons of miles away, right? That don't give a shit about them, and in fact are like openly disrespectful to them, don't like their ethnic groups, and really want to force them out and take all of their land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
we're still talking about like they're still working under like the concepts of like fiefdoms, where like they're out there like working in fields and sending half their crops to the more fancier parts of the empire.
So is this kind of like the British Empire with their territories?
Yeah,
this is the exact plot of A Bug's Life. If you really think about it, it's like a bunch of serfs and people who are being ruled over have to get all their crops and send it to the grasshoppers. This is A Bug's Life. I know what you're doing, Pixar, is what I'm saying.
And there's a constant fear of drowning from rain. Absolutely.
It's the most insane, but kind of, yeah.
Look, Ryan, you're upset because I'm making good points.
I love it.
You can say he's bugged by it.
We might have to do like a whole World War I versus A Bug's Life.
Oh no!
Critical study.
I quit the podcast.
Najoko sounds like no Joko.
Oh God!
Oh God! Okay. Anyway, so what are these three young bucks up to now?
Young bucks.
So at the time, our friend Franz Ferdinand. No joke, Stephen.
No, I'm trying not to. It's okay. Go ahead.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the next in line to be head of the Empire of Austro-Hungary, and basically he's like very flippant. Like anyone in his position would realize that, like, yeah, we annexed Bosnia, but they kind of hate us for that for the most part, and so does everyone else south of us. But he decides he's going to go visit there for the summer and ride around in a topless car or a topless limousine.
Man,
and they actually publish his route in the newspaper like months before.
Okay, that's maybe not do that with royalty.
I mean, to be fair, they didn't learn that lesson until like 1960 something with JFK.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're right.
I mean, it kept going. People kept doing that shit. And I'm just saying, after enough people get and I know that sounds really fucking horrible, but after a time, people are like, maybe open top
cars,
cars,
please. Not the thing.
Open top cars in public spaces where we publish the route is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
So obviously, the Black Hand decides like, okay, well, yeah, this is the shot, right? Like this is when we'll get him. Now it's a little unconfirmed if like Gavrilo Princip already had this idea in his head and decided to go this route, or if the Black Hand like kind of pushed the idea upon him and his group of friends, which by the way they called themselves Young Bosnia. So they were kind of like their own little independent group, receiving orders from this larger radical Black Hand group. But the Black Hand was able to get them some weapons and things like that. They managed to get them a few revolvers, some bombs, as well as some cyanide pills that they were supposed to take upon their successful assassination, so that they couldn't be brought in and questioned or anything like that. Now, normally you'd be like, these are kids. Like, why would they take cyanide pills other than just being radical? Well, the story goes that they were all suffering from tuberculosis, which they knew they didn't have long to live anyways. And at this point, it had become so radicalized that this would make them martyrs.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I feel like because it was mentioned also in that video, like the tuberculosis was considered prior to this that it was an honorable disease in a way. It affected the intellectuals and everything. So I don't know if when they discovered that it was an actual like bacteria that caused this, if it would, like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like if it fed into their fervor in a way. It's like it fueled them as like, we are all this because we are the chosen ones, because we have TV, and so therefore
I'm sure it kind of fed into the rage of it all, of, you know, we were being forced into these terrible conditions because of the situation that the empire has put us in, and now we're likely to die at a very young age because of this disease that we don't hear as much now in high society, but us and all of our friends and family living in the pits are having to deal with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure that played a part.
That's kind of wild. You know, I don't know if you noticed the tuberculosis was referred to as the Great White Plague back in the day. Also, consumption. I don't know if anybody's ever followed media of some sort, or like consumption is usually referred to like in like what's the name of the Western movie that everybody loves?
Tombstone.
Tombstone. Yeah. They called him Lunger, I think.
Lunger.
Yeah. Because he, of course, it's a disease of the lungs, among many other things. I mean, you can also get it in the brain. It can set you wacky. But this is what's crazy about tuberculosis is it killed more than the Black Plague over a longer period of time. And in fact, it killed like 1.6 million people in 2021. It's not gone. Like, this is not a disease that's uncommon. It is absolutely still a thing that exists and is a concern. And it, you know,
I have a lot of friends who work in hospitals in the pharmacy or as nurses, doctors, whatever, and they are still required to get regular tuberculosis skin tests.
Wow. What a scary thing that's still out there. Like
it's one of those things when you think about it like in the same vein as like polio, right? Yeah. It's like one of those terrible diseases from the past.
Old times. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's still rampant.
Yeah.
Not like it was in the early 1900s, but definitely still rampant.
Anything Western is basically associated with tuberculosis. I feel like there's every Western has a guy with tuberculosis in it. Yeah. So yeah. Watch out. Be safe out there, guys. That's all I'm saying.
So anyway, Gabrilo and his compatriots end up going to Sarajevo. I'm sorry. First, like I said, these guys were like students, right? Like I said, they weren't like trained as soldiers or spies or assassins or anything like that. So the Black Hand just gave them like,
right?
Yeah.
At the time of the assassination, which this is the thing, by the way, Gavrilo Princip lived in such a poor village that whenever he was born, the records are terrible in that time, especially in these poor places. So at one level, they had him at a city level, they had him where he was born like June 13th. Or something, and then at like a state level they had him as like July 13th, and that's the kind of conditions he was growing up in. Like, they just, nobody knew, and we'll circle back to why that's important in a little bit.
Okay.
But anyway, so not trained or anything like that. So upon getting their very limited weapons and supplies from the Black Hand, they have to basically go learn how to use these supplies, and they just go out to like a city park in Serbia and just like start shooting their guns and stuff to learn how they work.
Oh wow.
Okay.
But anyway, they head to Sarajevo and meet up with a few other guys that were also not hired, but recruited to try to assassinate the Archduke. And they spread out along the route. They all kind of split up. A couple of them are just like, oh, okay, fuck this dude. I'm out of here, and just ditch the scene. The next thing that happens is one of the guys, I believe is Chivinovich, actually sees the motorcade coming, which, by the way, there's like no guard out here at all.
Okay, I wanted to stop you for 1 second, because like a big thing is like, yeah, there's no guard. But there's incompetence on both sides here.
Oh, 100%.
So like this, I don't think like there's going to be that there's any kind of like one has the advantage of the other. This is like a kind of a battle of the no-wits in a way, you know.
I'm not sure if Franz Ferdinand was just like that mentally deficient and so were the people around him, or if they were honestly just that cocky and and self-absorbed that they were like, no one would ever, right?
I actually feel like, so this is one of the few times I'll say this in history, is I feel like there was just no precedent for it.
Yeah,
but I mean,
that's what I was thinking too.
So wars like we're about to experience in history have never happened. Sure, there's like Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan. There's all these like historical wars that have existed for a long time, but we're not talking about like urban-based guerrilla warfare, assassinations in that sense. It's usually done by poisoning or just straight up, I'm going to run up on you and stab you kind of thing. We're talking about subterfuge and people that they don't expect to attack them. Like to a degree, there's a certain amount of hubris involved in this. Is like, I'm the leader of this country and this is something underneath me. It should be perfectly safe for me to go here. And this is one of the few times where I can say no one saw this coming. No one knew. So they had no reason to have guards. They didn't think about that. Like, it wasn't a regular threat.
It's just the fact that they put the parade route and then they put no guards. Like, that's the kind of kicker for me, that you wouldn't even think of that. Anyway, continue.
Well, it was just like crazy unorganized too. Like some of his people, some of the Archduke's people were like showing up late or like didn't know where to meet up. And so they were just like all scattered about and weren't part of the motorcade, or just like didn't even make it to town or whatever. Like, it was just a fucking mess. But like I said, either by hubris or by ignorance or whatever, he still decided to parade through the streets with the top down, waving, and
it's basically a Girls Gone Wild situation, but with a world leader. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Top down.
So the motorcade starts driving past Chibinovich, and he quickly like, oh my God, this is my chance, and takes out one of his bombs and chunks it towards the car that Franz Ferdinand's in, and the driver sees him like step out of the crowd and throw it. So he kind of speeds up a bit and manages to dodge the bomb, and the bomb hits the ground instead and rolls and goes underneath the car behind him, blows it up. There was some officers that were riding in that car, but it also injured a lot of civilians that were just spectating. Ended up there was like 20 casualties altogether from that bomb.
I mean, he rolled in that one, but he still,
So,
oh my Lord.
So this is the first like blunderish part, right? And so Chibinovich quickly takes a cyanide capsule, pops it in his mouth, and crushes it. But these cyanide capsules were actually expired. And so it did not have the effect needed to actually kill him. So once he realizes that he's not dying, he goes and runs and jumps off the bridge closest to him into a little creek that is running underneath the road. But it hadn't rained in like weeks and the water was extremely low. It was only about 4 inches deep. So he just kind of like hit the bank and rolled over.
Oh, no.
Good Lord, dude.
I know cyanide can expire, like poison can expire where it's less deadly.
If there's anything I take away from this episode, it's the fact that I learned that you got to check the labels on your cyanide capsules. Like, apparently, because oh my god, when will it work out for this guy?
I mean, can you imagine jumping off a bridge and just being like breaking your ankles, being like, "Oh, I'm gonna land in water."
It's almost like something out of an Austin Powers movie, you know.
So then the driver turns to Franz Ferdinand. He was like, "Okay, we should really get back to Austria." And he was like, "All right, let's do it." And they packed up and left. That's the end of the story. There was no World War I.
What? No, that's not how it went down. You know,
that sounds like that's what should have happened.
So
did you just Quentin Tarantino this episode?
So what actually happened was. I'm not sure exactly who said it. I'm not sure if it was the driver or another passenger or Franz Ferdinand himself, but someone said that guy was crazy. No one else would try that. And they continued to go down.
You can't be serious.
Oh, are you kidding me? Oh my god, why would they want to keep going after that? You know what, it was a different time. They're a product of their time. Okay,
so they're going to continue down their regular route, and then Franz Ferdinand says to the driver, "No, I want to go see the injured people who were hit because of that bomb. I want to go check on them." And so at this time, our main character, Gavrilo Princip, he hears that explosion from a few blocks away, and he's convinced that, the plan was carried out. My buddy Chabinovich was successful a few blocks from here. And so he starts running towards the scene to go check it out. And not long after, he sees Franz Ferdinand driving by, still well alive. And he's like, what the fuck? And so now he knows that the plan hasn't been complete. So from there, Franz Ferdinand starts heading towards the hospital, but there's no maps, there's no GPS, his driver's not familiar with Sarajevo at all, and makes a turn down a street. I don't know if it was a one-way and he went the wrong way or what, but he turns down this one street and happens to be right in front of Gavrilo Princip, who's like, holy shit, this is my chance. But the car is going so fast, he's trying to reach and pull a bomb out of his jacket, but it gets like caught in his pocket, so he can't get it out. So he pulls out his revolver.
I know that pain.
Oh man! Oh god!
You know that feeling. You know that feeling. You got a bomb in your jacket pocket and you just can't get it out.
Ah man! Sometimes you just can't pull it out in time.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb. So the car is going past him. In any other situation, like even if he would have shot, there's no way he probably could have connected that shot and killed him. Luckily, someone on the other side of the street yells, "Hey, you're going the wrong way." And the driver quickly hits the brakes.
You can't.
Tries to put it in reverse to turn around, and the car stalls out. And so Gavrilo
Now's his chance.
Yep. So he runs
again.
Up and locks eyes, and remember, he doesn't die. He's later arrested, and I think he gave his testimony, and he said he stared into the eyes of the security guy that was with Archduke, and basically said he looked like a fucking idiot.
What? Well, so the security guy was just sitting there slack-jawed
that's the impression that he gave.
I mean, clearly, if he wasn't let's leave the country immediately. If he was you know what? You're right, boss. Bomb went off. Let's go check on everybody.
I I'm just imagining, like, so, you know, like we all have people in our lives that are kind of goobers, you know. And you know exactly what I mean when I say the word goober. Like I imagine.
Absolutely.
Who are you pointing to? Me or Steven? Right.
No.
Viewer's choice. Okay, we'll say it's me.
Rearrange those frames however you feel like.
I just picture him looking at him, and like I almost like just picture this like homely face that you would like borrow your neighbor's lawn, like the guy you borrowed his lawnmower from, you know, or something like that. They're like, oh yeah, you catch the local sports team game. Shut up, Steve.
I love how you were trying to imitate somebody who likes sports and you clearly don't.
Did you watch that ball go through that hula hoop the other night?
The hoopski baskets. So you watch the hoopski baskets?
Yeah. Did you see how far Dan Brown ran last week? What?
Yeah, and it has the LeBaron James in it.
So after getting his chance, he runs up to the car. He fires off 2 shots from his revolver. Doesn't know, this all happened so quick. He doesn't know what's happened. And by that time, a crowd has surrounded him and is really trying to kill him. They're beating the shit out of him. And luckily, luckily for him, a police officer got in there and managed to arrest him before he was quite literally like lynched in the street by a mob of people who saw him murder the Archduke.
One police officer got him out of.
I don't know if it was just one, but I know a police officer managed to get over there and arrest him.
So did his cyanide pill go okay?
So I've heard different accounts. I heard he did take it and same thing, it didn't work. And then I heard another one that was he didn't even try to take it before he was being like beat up by a crowd.
I mean, it's expected. It's weird that these people can just come out of a giant crowd and just run up to the car and pop 1 or 2 off.
Well, there wasn't, the infrastructure was not in place for this parade of the Archduke. I mean, like I said, there wasn't guards on every corner like there should have been. They made this wrong turn, so even if there was like barricades on the sidewalks or anything, they wouldn't be on this road because he wasn't even supposed to be on this road.
Study any routes whatsoever, you know.
Well, I'm sure he did, but remember, Franz Ferdinand demanded to be to this hospital that wasn't part of the route. And
I guess you're right.
The driver's trying to like improv it last minute.
Okay, the driver did a good job, Ryan. Okay, if you're defending the driver.
I feel a little bit.
My great grandfather.
I'm sorry. What was his name?
I feel a little bit like,
I don't know. It's Slavic.
What is this? Austria, Hungary.
Yep. They're in Bosnia. They're in Sarajevo.
But the thing is, I feel like the home country isn't very much like a military power. They don't operate with a military mindset in terms of their leadership and things like that. I mean, like historically, do you have any information about historically
I don't know enough about that, so.
about their military or like kind of the operations they've worked on in the past and anything like that?
Wait, who are you talking about?
I'm talking about the motorcade. Essentially, had no like operational awareness, is what I'm getting at. They don't really have a military background, really.
Yeah. So, well, some did. Like I said, the car that got blown up behind him had military personnel on it, and like I said, in his car there was a security person. I don't know if he was just so like alarmed by everything going on that like he just wasn't on his A game or what. And I have to imagine there's more than 2 cars. Yeah. Like, so there were more, but I have no idea.
It turns out he took out the most experienced by accident. Yeah. Like, I mean, not to be glib, but it definitely feels that way. If there was experience in that motorcade, it looks like most of it flew out the back of the second car.
Right. It just so he was arrested, and managed to stand trial after the war had already began. At this point, you know, some other things happened after the assassination, like World War I didn't just like start after Franz Ferdinand was shot. You had them. Yeah, they started imposing like some crazy sanctions and ridiculous terms to Serbia. Basically, and actually, I mean, side note, Serbia was like kind of ready to agree to almost everything except like letting them send their own state police down to police the streets of Serbia. But anyway, that aside, it just led to this all-out conflict. So after it had started, Gavrilo Princip and some of his co-conspirators get put on trial, and he was supposed to receive the death sentence. But there was a law that if you were younger than 20 at the time of the crime, then you could not get the death sentence. You could not be hung or killed in any way. And he happened to, I told you earlier about how his birth date was recorded different in two different municipalities.
Oh, it's all coming full circle.
So if he actually was born June 13th, he should have got the death sentence based on when the crime was committed. But the court ended up going with the latter July 13th date, which kept him from receiving the death sentence.
Talk about saved by the bell. Jesus.
Well, he got thrown in the hole and they kind of hated him for killing their leader. So he got beaten, tortured, and put in isolation, starved, and all that good stuff. And then died from tuberculosis a couple of years later. So
Jesus Christ, poor guy. Well, he was assassinating a dude, so I guess not.
This one guy, really changed the world as we know it in the clumsiest of ways possible. But I mean, it's crazy to think like what would have happened if that assassination hadn't happened, right?
This is always like one of those weird things. It's kind of like, and this is kind of topical, but it always kind of surprises me how much we kind of venerate the people involved in this sort of thing. Like it's no wonder that there are people who commit acts of murder or mass shootings and things like that to gain notoriety, because ultimately we do literally pin down these people in history. Dating all the way back to the start of World War I, going all the way until places like Columbine and things like that. Like we know those people's names.
There's an entire musical written about every up until the point the musical was written, every person who attempted to assassinate a president. It's called Assassins. It's actually my favorite musical. So.
That's a very specific musical. That's impressive. Yeah. I'm genuinely curious in it now.
Well, it's all about who's telling the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
For instance, we now know like the Hungarian Empire and like the German Empire of the time, like the Axis, as the bad guys, right? But during, it depended where you lived, who was the good guys and who was the bad guys, right? And after World War I, when some of those Balkan states finally did combine and become their own independent nation of Yugoslavia, you saw pictures of Gavrilo Princip like painted on walls, like murals of like how he was like, this martyr, this freedom fighter and things like that. Later on, after Yugoslavia was kind of no longer a thing, he started being looked down upon as, an anarchist, assassin. Again, so it's always about what lens a person's being viewed in, right?
Yeah, history is always written by the victor kind of situation. Very
exactly.
much the case. Like it's one of those cases like it's always said that the first victims of the Nazis were the Germans. Like because that's the thing is like, a lot of people like to generalize and they don't realize there's a lot more to it than that. And I feel like that's kind of the case. You come away from revolutions like this. I mean, some would argue like, what's his name? Che Guevara is a revolutionary that did great work and fought for freedom. And others would argue like he fought against a system that worked, maybe not perfectly. And he killed a lot of people in the process of supposed revolution. And it's so this whole thing goes throughout history of like the perspective is absolutely king. That we can all agree that Hitler sucks. So there's that.
And regardless of where you sit with Che Guevara, you could still buy a Che Guevara shirt at Target. So
Wait, really?
Yeah, they still sell them.
They didn't know that. That's a thing.
You can get
them
in. Yeah, they sell them on all like all those weird play like TJ Maxx and all that shit.
Okay.
We're gonna get an email from TJ Maxx be like, no, we don't.
They don't care. They don't care. I work next to a place owned by TJ Maxx, and they do not give a shit. That place is
yes, we do.
No, that place is the wild fucking west, man. Every time you walk in there,
I love TJ Maxx.
TJ Maxx loves you.
I've heard some like crazy things about whether it was this exact moment. Like if this assassination had happened any other time, World War One would have turned out a ton different. If you went back a few years, the Germans were a lot more apt to probably not side with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Russia would have been a lot weaker at the time. But if you went forward a few years, it would have, I don't know, it would have been entirely different.
Forward's not fair because it is a reaction based on what already happened. If you go past wise, I can argue, I can agree with that. If it had happened earlier, some things may have changed. But if you're talking about afterwards, that's not fair because the events already happened. So the things that happened afterwards were shaped by it. So that's
true.
I also got to bring up the fact that assassinations, like while like media and things like that portray it in this very like professional, like always successful manner. Like every time you watch a movie with assassins and shit like that, they always manage to nail their targets and stuff like that, right? But assassinations have never been anything but messy and uncoordinated, and most of the time a surprise if they are actually successful. I mean, I mentioned JFK earlier, but I mean, ultimately that guy was caught like immediately, and they can argue all the different theories and things like that, but in reality, like somebody set out to do something, they did it, and it was tough to do, and they got caught for it. I mean, Lincoln, but in this, like, it was some guy that ran up in the back of a theater and shot a guy in the head. Like he wasn't sneaky and shoot from like 1,000 meters away. He just ran up on him and shot him.
Didn't he do the whole like Fan of the Opera curtain thing? And he was like six zapatadas.
He basically like pulled back the private thing. It was like bam.
But I always imagine like maybe it was just dramatized in my head that he like did the whole like dagger into the curtain thing and like slid down, and he's like took center stage, and he was like six zapatadas, and then he got chased down into a barn, and he died in the barn.
So there's a lot of fun. If you ever want to like go down a crazy rabbit hole, and this is one of the examples I use for like assassination a lot of times, is the United States attempted to assassinate Fidel Castro multiple times and failed miserably. Yeah. I believe at one point they had like a poison pen or some shit like that, and like he gave it to somebody else as a gift or something. I want to hunt down the details, but I remember this specifically being talked about like during like the Cuban Missile Crisis, Cold War era. They tried to get this guy numerous times. Like there's actual documentation from the CIA and FBI, and they couldn't pull it off. Like we're talking about organizations that the United States government had their hand in, and they could not pull off an assassination. But most of the ones that are successful in history are pulled off by some rando who's angry and has a gun. Like that's crazy.
Just straight to business. He doesn't monologue. He doesn't tell you his evil scheme or anything. The way you describe Castro, though, sounds almost cartoonish, like a Tom and Jerry cartoon or something, or a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner.
Wile E. Coyote,
yeah. It's like he tries to get. We try and get him, but he just like out of pure luck, he roadrunners out of there every time.
Yeah. Fidel Castro, meep meep.
I love the idea of like an American disguise painting like a hole in the balcony, and he walks right over it, and the American's like, huh. Okay. And he tries to walk over it, and it falls right through.
Right straight through. Yeah, but it just miraculously works out for Castro.
He's like, strokes his beard the entire way across the hole. Yes. Oh my gosh.
They put they do the whole like explosion in the piano key, and he plays the melody. The American comes up, he's like, "Oh, this is how you do it."
You know, like 2 days ago, I was trying to like think of some fun topics and things, and one of the things I looked up was like, who is like the worst assassin of all time, and then I was like, well, I can't really Google that because like there's not really an answer, because if they were that bad,
I would know.
It is just such a crazy story, start to finish, of something that, like I said, it was just so bungled from the start on both sides that led, well, along with some other things, but was really the trigger pull that started one of the biggest conflicts our world's ever seen. Well, with that, I will say, make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps us out. We got a lot of cool topics coming over the next couple months. Steven might get in the editor's chair eventually. We'll never know. And just kidding.
Just kidding.
That's funny. You're a funny guy. I might actually get in the editor's chair. I just need to, nail down a job or something, or do this for a job.
Job first, then we'll worry about that.
we actually have some new formats coming out here soon, besides just our normal podcast-esque type format that we usually do. So we're excited to share that with you guys. I think we got some cool stories to tell that maybe aren't podcast worthy as far as how much time they take, but it would definitely be better in a short term or short form video.
Yeah.
Also have some new merch coming to the merch store, chaoticpubcast.com. You can grab the Z shirt still.
That's me.
Absolutely.
Make sure you pick one of those up. We make exactly 1 penny off every sale, which we are giving to Zach for his birthday.
Absolutely.
Which I am donating to charity.
Charity's like, what the fuck is this? 5 cents?
5 cents.
Oh, we're moving up in the world.
And I'm going to write that 5 cents off.
All right. Well, stay tuned. Like I said, make sure you subscribe, keep up with the channel, and we hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.